Top of the morning, everybody. It is really good to see you. Welcome to The Sweat, presented by DraftKings. I am Emerson Lotzia, behind the wheel here for the next 55 minutes or so. Riding shotgun is a smorgasbord of analysts. We're going to take an early look at some of the salaries ahead of what is likely to be a very moist Players' Championship. We have Canadians talking hockey. We have our NASCAR expert, Jeff Ulrich, refusing to stay in his lane. And he dives into NFL futures on the DK Sportsbook, along with JJ Schultz. We're going to get this party started, though, with our NBA panel telling us who they are building their lineups around on this 8-game slate. So good morning to DraftKings contributors Jeff Pratt, Nick Fryer. We got DK Nation's Chimney Vaidya. Is this your debut on the show, dude?
It's not. I've been on multiple times. I can't say for the audience whether it's good or bad that I'm back on, but
okay.
We'll try this again on Monday.
Okay, all right, sounds good. It's really good to have you here. It's good to have all three of you here. Fryer, who's your go-to guy at center? Tell me.
I just want to say quickly that Jeff Ulrich staying outside of his lane, I think, is the best move for him. He's also much better at it than Steve Buchanan. Just wanted to point that out.
He's been very good at NASCAR, dude. He has.
He has. It's very entertaining. It's must watch, must listen to stuff. But when it comes to me getting back into my lane, I think Cat is the best play tonight at center at 10.6K going up against the Blazers. When it comes to Jokic, of course, top billing in terms of pricing and everything, but on the second leg of a back-to-back, potential blowout spot there. And I know that the Blazers provide that as well. But Cat just went off against them the other night, and guess what? He's in the same kind of situation, but he's at home in the sense that Anthony Edwards, doubtful tonight, so if we don't expect to see him to play, Cat has a 32.4% usage rate with Edwards off the floor this season, and he produces a whopping 1.53 DK fantasy points without Edwards on the floor this season. So Cat's my guy tonight over Embiid, over Jokic, and even when you're looking at other high-price options, I still think he is the number one guy to go with tonight.
Yeah, averaging over 50 fantasy points on each site here. Like this with DraftKings over the last 3 games, like he's been just absolutely tearing it up. Okay, Chimney, where do you want to go at center? Talk to me.
I like Towns. He's a great option, great matchup. The Blazers are absolutely decimated, and as mentioned, Anthony Edwards is probably not going to play, so it looks like Towns is a good option, but I think I'm going to go with Embiid off a little bit of a rest. Harden comes back in this game, and Embiid is the front runner for MVP. He's actually taken a jump up in play since Harden has come into the lineup for the Sixers. I like the matchup against the Bulls. Vucevic is questionable with a hamstring. We know Vooch is not a big defensive star anyway, so I like Embiid to keep up his hot play against Chicago tonight.
All right, cool. Jeff, hook me up, dude. You spending a lot of money here for your building block at center?
Not too much money. I think that Cat is definitely the best option on the board. I mean, with Yusuf Nurkic out, Drew Eubanks is the Blazers' best shot at stopping him, and we all saw how that worked out for them last game. But I'm going to go a little bit down here and pay up for Bam Adebayo. Bam, he was subpar in his last game, only scoring 23 fantasy points, but don't let that deter you from rostering him tonight. Let's be honest, that's just what happens when you play against the current MVP or going to be the MVP in Joel Embiid. Tonight, he's facing a bit easier of a challenge in the Rockets, who rank dead last in the league in fantasy points allowed to centers. Add that to the fact that Houston leads the league in pace this season, and I think you're looking at a great bounce-back opportunity for Bam.
Yeah, and he scored at least 50 fantasy points in 3 of his last 6 games alone. Like, yeah, it was a clunker last time out, but we'll get past that. Let's talk about which forward is a must-play. Chimney, where are you going?
I'm going a little under here on the value. I'm going with Jeremy Grant. He's had a few big games recently. The Pistons have surprisingly been playing well of late, and I like the matchup against the Hawks. They're down a few perimeter players. Some guys are still working through injuries, so I like Jeremy Grant. I believe he's in the 7K range right now, maybe a little bit under that. So I like him to keep up his production. Not going to wow you in terms of points, but going to get the job done as kind of a value play at the forward spot. If you're spending big on center and guard with this slate, I like Grant at the forward spot.
Okay, wow, saving some money there for a building block. Jeff, what about you, dude? Who is your guy at forward?
I'm going with RJ Barrett at 8K. I'm the farthest thing from a Knicks fan, but I love what RJ has been doing lately. Since returning from an ankle injury, he's averaging 28.8 points, 6.8 boards, and 4.8 assists per game. That's especially a significant bump in assists from a season average of 2.8. As I mentioned last time I was on the Sweat, the Knicks are without a true point guard right now, which has really forced RJ into an expanded role as a playmaker, and he's facing the Kings tonight, who rank 29th in fantasy points allowed to wings, and Sacramento plays with a ton of pace, which should result in more opportunities for RJ.
Okay, Nick, who's your forward you're building around?
Yeah, I'm with Jeff on this one. RJ Barrett, of course, has point guard eligibility for tonight as well. But the volume that he's getting since the All-Star break has been huge in that the 8K range. I love him right now at this spot. I mean, he's had last game was his first game. They went sub 20 shots since the All-Star break. And Jeff kind of talked about it before with the Kings, 7th in terms of pace and 28th in terms of defensive rating. So this is a great spot for him. As much as the Knicks, tend to not put up a ton of points, I think this is a spot for Barrett to go off and at minimum provide 5 times value.
Yeah, Sacramento pretty bad at perimeter defense as well, which could definitely benefit Mr. Barrett. Who's the guard you're building a lineups around, Jeff?
I'm going with James Harden. He's the guy who I'm paying all the way up for tonight. He got the day off against Miami, and Philly got dominated, so he'll be fresh and motivated to bounce back against one of the top teams in the East in Chicago. I'm using one of my favorite stats here because I've turned into one of the biggest Bulls haters out there, but Chicago's only 2-14 against teams above 600. The Sixers, they're above 600, and I think they should cruise in this matchup, led by their new superstar. He also hasn't scored less than 48 fantasy points since joining Philly, so you're getting guaranteed volume and production.
Nick, is there a guard that really stands out to you here to build around?
Yeah, there are a few guys. We're talking about higher price options. I think De'Aaron Fox going up against the Knicks, and talk about volume. I think he's in a good spot there. I also think D'Angelo Russell, especially if you don't want to roster Cat tonight at 8.2K going up against the Blazers, another guy who's in a good spot with no Anthony Edwards. But for me, my favorite guy is kind of more in that value range at 5.3K going up against the Nuggets, and that's Jordan Poole, because you got no Steph Curry, you got no Klay Thompson, no Andrew Wiggins, and of course no Draymond. In that type of situation, Jordan Poole has a 33.9% usage rate, and he produces 1.19 DK fantasy points in those games as well. When the Warriors saw the Nuggets in mid-February, he produced nearly 5 times value in that game, and that's where the Warriors had pretty much all those guys in the lineup as well. So I think he'll have no problem providing plenty of value tonight.
Chinmay, what about you, dude?
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree there. I think Jordan Poole, the matchup is just too good. Nuggets coming off an overtime game last night, so a little bit tired, and the Warriors are resting all their guys. So Jordan Poole, even though he's had a few opportunities where maybe he could have started when Thompson was sitting out, but Steve Kerr has opted to bring him in off the bench, I think he has to start him tonight just because of the personnel they're down. And he's been playing well of late, shooting the ball with confidence. So I like Jordan Poole, and he's also not going to cost you that much money. So a value spot there for the Warriors guard.
Man, Chinmay just delivering the value left and right, which kind of brings me to my next question here. Like, Nick, how do you feel about going that route of building around a value play?
Yeah, I think Poole, obviously, of course, is a guy who can save you a ton of money, but there are a couple other good options, of course, with guys questionable. You look over at the Lakers-Spurs game, and Lonnie Walker's a guy who you got to at least earmark right now. DeJounte Murray is questionable for this game, and I'm more interested in that side of this battle as opposed to the Lakers, because LeBron being questionable really doesn't mean a whole heck of a lot. But when it comes to Lonnie Walker, with Murray off the floor this season, of course, with Derek White, who's now gone off the floor, Walker has the highest usage rate, 29.2% on the team, and he produced the second most DK fantasy points per minute on the team as well at 1.05, only behind Jakob Poeltl. Another guy I like too is Keon Johnson, who's going to save you a little bit more at 3.9K going up against the Timberwolves, coming off a strong showing, and no Simons tonight for the Blazers.
All right, Chinmay, you've already mentioned like Jeremy Grant and a few others. Hook me up with another value play that you would consider building around.
I really like Gabe Vincent, the Miami Heat. Lowry is once again out tonight for personal reasons, and Vincent has been getting the start for the Heat, and he's under 5K, and he's produced well. We don't know how many minutes he's going to get just with the way they run their rotation, and Tyler Hero's another option if you want someone who's more in line for solid minutes. But Vincent has played well when he's gotten the start, and he's due against a pretty bad Rockets team. So I like him as the value tonight at the guard spot, especially with Lowry out.
All right, Jeff, value play, please.
Lonnie Walker was my top value play as well, to agree with Nick. I think, as you mentioned, Nick, his usage rate has been through the roof lately, and the Lakers just beat the Warriors, so they're due for a dud tonight with how their season's gone this year. But I'm going to pivot to another Warrior, not Jordan Poole, but I'm going with Jonathan Kaminga. As Chinmay was saying, listen to the players that are out for Golden State tonight. You got Curry, Thompson, Wiggins, Green, Gary Payton, Iguodala, and James Wiseman, who's still recovering from that knee injury. Kaminga, he's been impressive in a rather limited role for Golden State lately. He scored 25 plus fantasy points in 3 of his last 6 contests. He, along with Jordan Poole and a couple of other guys, should see an immensely increased workload against the Nuggets tonight.
All right, dudes, before you guys take off, let's hit up the beautiful DK Sportsbook. Which matchup tonight features the best bets? Chinmay.
So there's 2 that I really like. They're underdogs tonight, but I can easily see them winning both games. And that's the Lakers against the Spurs and the Jazz against the Mavericks. I think both teams are due for a win. The Jazz have been playing well, actually. They've been scraping by opponents. They haven't looked impressive, but they've been getting some wins. Doncic just coming back for the Mavs, so we'll see if he's still working through that toe injury. So I like the Jazz there as the underdog. And then the Lakers are 2-1 against the Spurs this year. LeBron is just coming off a massive game, so I think he's going to keep it going. I like the Lakers against the Spurs and the Jazz against the Mavericks tonight.
All right, Jeff, which bet stands out to you here on the DK Sportsbook for tonight?
I like looking at the Pistons and Hawks game. Detroit, they're plus 7.5, and they've covered that spread in 6 of their last 7, and they've won outright in 5 of those games. So Dwayne Casey's crew is playing really hard right now, and it's more about Atlanta because you don't know which Hawks team is going to show up. They just barely squeaked by the Wizards in the last matchup. They picked up an impressive win over the Bulls, but then they choked in the second half to Boston. And then I also like looking at Cade Cunningham's player props, specifically the over on his 18.5 points and 5.5 rebounds. He's been hitting that number really consistently as of late. So I like the Pistons and Cade to go over his props.
All right, Fryer, which bet stands out to you tonight?
I think Jimmy makes a good point when it comes to the Jazz game. I do like that spread a lot. I do like just the Jazz as underdogs on the money line straight up. But I also like the Portland-Minnesota game going over in this. I know it's pretty high at 233.5 points. But Minnesota is the best when it comes to hitting the over this season. Portland is just 500, right around 500 in that. So I expect the better team to dictate the pace tonight. And of course, Portland not great defensively. Most of the player props are actually all the player props are off the book last I checked. But I will be looking at Cat's numbers, D'Angelo Russell's, and some of those value guys we were talking about when it comes to the Blazers game. So I think that Portland, Minnesota has some options tonight for you.
All right, bros. Good stuff. Chinmay, good having you back. Great work, Mr. Fryer, Mr. Pratt as well. We've still got a 5-game NHL slate to gossip about, plus our first golf Millie Maker of the year is here. But first, we will get some NFL best bets right after this quick break. All right, the longer baseball continues to just murder itself, the more we will talk about NFL futures. DraftKings contributor Jeff Ulrich, RotoWire's AJ Schultz are here to share some of their best bets on the DK Sportsbook. So we got some futures categories here that we can dive into. But we had a report this morning here, guys, that Aaron Rodgers has a contract offer from the Green Bay Packers that would alter the quarterback market. They have made a significant long-term contract offer to Aaron Rodgers. Jeff, is he likely going to stick around? Is this the best option for him?
Yeah, I mean, I think Green Bay should still be the favorite, right? I mean, again, this just basically boils down to, where does Aaron Rodgers feel like he's got the best shot to win a championship? That's basically what this boils down to. I don't think there's really that much else involved. I know there was the past animosity with the Packers, but that seems to be pushed under the table. Money can fix a lot of things, right? I think right now Aaron Rodgers is really just weighing his options and saying, what is my best chance to win? Maybe, like a team like Denver appeals to him, or maybe he changes his mind. But I think when Aaron Rodgers is sitting back at home right now, the answer is still Green Bay. So I think Green Bay deserves to be the favorite in the Aaron Rodgers sweepstakes. Obviously, they've done enough for the contract situation. I think it's just, does Aaron Rodgers, does he still have feelings of animosity there? Does he feel deep down inside that this team just will not commit and do what's necessary, much like they did last year when they didn't commit to getting Odell Beckham? Does he just feel like he just needs a new place? We're at the whim of Aaron Rodgers here, but at the same time, you still have to make Green Bay the favorite because there's no clear outside contender that is realistically a better spot for Aaron Rodgers to win.
Yeah, AJ, this futures category we're talking about in the DK Sportsbook is all about who will take that first snap for like a few different teams. The Packers, as we were preparing for this show, the Packers wasn't even on the DK Sportsbook, but who will take Green Bay's first snap this season? Rodgers, the heavy favorite right now. Jordan Love, then plus 330. Jameis Winston, plus 800. You got to think, too, here, guys, the decision has to come soon because he said he did not want to hold off for a while because he didn't want to impact guys like Devontae Adams, who the Packers are reportedly going to hit with the franchise tag. But, AJ, does this make sense here that obviously Rodgers would be the favorite?
I mean, yeah, I think he has to be the favorite there. But I would be so surprised to see him sign a contract before Devontae Adams. Like, I know that franchise tag is an X factor here, but like, why is he going to commit for a guy that wants to basically run the team? I mean, I'm right in it. I'm a Packer fan. I live in Wisconsin. Like, we hear it all the time. The guy basically wants to run the team. They hired Tom Clement, which Matt LaFleur basically was like, yeah, Rodgers had a lot to do with bringing him in as the QB coach here. So, like, he's running the team. Why is he going to put pen to paper before Devontae Adams? So I would be surprised to see that happen, or at least without, talking to Devontae like, hey, man, should I actually sign this? Are you coming back? But to that end, I think Rodgers has to be the favorite. Now, if he leaves for that bet, you're going to see the Jordan Love number jump probably in the minus category there because I think he's the obvious guy after that.
What's crazy is this weekend, too, I think it was just yesterday, you had NBC Sports reported that while Rodgers is staying or is considering staying with the Packers, he's also already negotiated trade deals with teams like the Broncos, the Titans, and the Steelers. That's according to one of their sources. Speaking of the Steelers here, guys, like Mason Rudolph is the favorite at plus 250 to take that first snap with any rookie coming in at plus 400. You can see it there on your screen. Dwayne Haskins at plus 600. Then you have a few interesting options, including free agents like Jameis Winston or potential trade targets, Russell Wilson. Hey, Aaron Rodgers. Who do you see taking that first snap in Pittsburgh this season, Jeff?
Oh, boy, yeah. This one, Pittsburgh is, this could go so many different ways, right? Pittsburgh is a team, who has a solid defense, and they might just say, you know what? We're going to stick with Mason Rudolph and maybe bringing in a veteran and go that way. So I think that Mason Rudolph, again, like he is the deserving favorite right now. It's such a weaker draft class that even if Pittsburgh moved up in the draft, it's not a sure thing that they just throw this rookie out there on a team that, again, might be more defensive oriented anyway. So I think Mason Rudolph is the deserving favorite, but I think it's also a team where you can start to take shots. Like I'm not interested in taking shots at like Jameis Winston for the Green Bay Packers, but for the Pittsburgh Steelers situation, I think Jameis Winston makes a ton of sense. I mean, they have a guy in Chase Claypool, obviously Deontay Johnson. Like, these are downfield weapons in the wide receiver game. And, what have we seen for the Pittsburgh Steelers offense last couple of years? They've just been stagnant because they have a quarterback who can't throw over 5 yards. At least Jameis Winston would bring that option to them. So I actually like Winston for the Steelers fit. I think that when this kind of boils down to it and all the big names are kind of off the market, I think Jameis Winston is definitely a name that the Pittsburgh Steelers will be exploring at some point.
All right, AJ, whose odds do you like here to take the Steelers' first snap?
Well, I mean, I think it is important to remember Rudolph just got like a $4 million contract extension. That's a lot of money for a backup. So obviously they see something in him to at least compete for the job. So yeah, being the favorite makes a lot of sense to me. I agree with Jeff. I don't like any rookie option. I'd rather go to Dwayne Haskins here at plus 600 because I think there's at least a chance he could beat Rudolph, in a competition. And I think I prefer, just like Jeff, one of those two in-house options. I'd rather bet on those than being speculative with Winston or Wilson in this spot. So for me, I think Haskins at plus 600 makes the most sense, in terms of value and trying to bet that one.
Yeah, Pittsburgh Brass seems to have confidence in Rudolph. His only start this past year was the game that resulted in a tie with the Detroit Lions. Next up, though, speaking of Russell Wilson, we got the Seahawks. They always seem to have questions now, like year in, year out, about Wilson's status. He is the favorite in this spot, as you would expect, minus 250 with the any rookie category coming up at plus 400 as the next closest option. So despite all this drama, what are your expectations for Wilson's future in Seattle, AJ?
I actually don't think he's going to stick around. By all reports, he's looking at trade options and seeing what's out there and wants to explore other opportunities on where he could be competitive. So, and I think it's telling. Look, we talked about Rodgers and all the turmoil there and all this back and forth, and he's minus 500 compared to Wilson just being minus 250. So clearly there's some indication that he might not be there. In terms of where I go on this bet, look, they don't have a first-round pick. Obviously, they would get one if they traded Russell Wilson. But because of that, I'm not looking at any rookie option here. They're not going to draft a guy in the second round that's going to start day one. This is actually a spot where I like Carson Wentz at plus 1,000 or even Jimmy G at plus 2,000. I think those are both names that would make sense to end up there. A guy like, if Aaron Rodgers were to hit the market, I don't think he's looking at Seattle. It's the reason Wilson's looking to get out. So having somebody else who maybe wants to come in, earn an opportunity to be a starter on a team, kind of revamp the image a little bit. I think Wentz and Jimmy G both make sense there. And that's why I like their odds in this bet on the DK Sportsbook.
Jeff, whose odds do you like here to take Seattle's first snap at quarterback?
AJ made a really good point about the differing odds we're getting with Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson is half, of Aaron Rodgers. I mean, this is a completely different situation too. This isn't Russell Wilson necessarily having all the power. The team has a say here, and maybe the team just says enough is enough. Like, we're going to cut ties with you. You're clearly not happy, or they just get an offer like of 4 first-round picks and like, you know what, we need to just do this. Excuse me. Now, everything we've heard from the team thus far has suggested that, like, they're not really ready to do that. But things can flip so quick in the NFL, and we don't really know what's going on behind the scenes here. I think Russell Wilson is interested in leaving the Seattle Seahawks. And I think that, this is the second offseason in a row we've heard this. So I'm more interested in taking shots down the line here. I think a guy like Marcus Mariota, plus 1,400. I think if Russell Wilson does leave, again, it's going to become much like a Pittsburgh situation. Seattle will look to fill that hole with a veteran guy. I think Pete Carroll wants to run a defensive run-first offense anyways. Tyrod Taylor, Marcus Mariota, those would be the two names I'd be looking for in Seattle. I think they'll bring some of the same mobility as Wilson, and Carroll will just try and build the run game around them.
Damn, Mariota hasn't made a single start in the NFL since October of 2019.
That's a long time.
Yes.
He's looked pretty good, though, when he stepped in, right? I mean, he's had a couple good starts. A guy who, I'm actually surprised Marcus Mariota didn't get a shot at starting last year. I thought really a team like Washington would take him on, but he signed that juicy backup deal with the Raiders. Who can forgive him for that?
Yeah, absolutely. That's like the best job in the world as a backup quarterback.
It really is.
The backup quarterback in the NFL. No argument here. The next team available on the DK Sportsbook, guys, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So we're still going under the assumption that Tom Brady is definitely retired. So Kyle Trask holds the top spot here at plus 300. Take a look at the odds on your screen. Jimmy Garoppolo actually comes in at second at plus 500. Could he finally replace Tom Brady? Then you got a rookie, free agent options, and trade targets kind of filling out the rest of the board. Which direction do you think Tampa goes in, Jeff? Because they're still in win-now mode, so maybe adding a veteran quarterback on the cheap would be the best option, like a Jimmy G.
Like, there's just no way Bruce Arians came back to stick around and start Kyle Trask next year, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's just no way that's happening. I think you've got to fade the top of the board for Tampa. you've got to go big with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think if you're taking a shot, I think Russell Wilson is a guy I would look to be taking a shot with here if he's on the board, if he becomes available in the betting odds. I don't know about Aaron Rodgers necessarily. I'm pretty convinced that it's coming down to like one or two teams for Aaron Rodgers. I'm not sure if Tampa's in there, but who knows? And I really don't hate the Jimmy G option. I feel like if those big names just they can't hook the big fish again like they did with Tom Brady, they will look to Jimmy G because, you know, the one thing Garoppolo does bring, he brings a decent pocket presence. Yeah, he's a bit statuesque. Yes, he gets banged up, but he's got a pretty quick release. And I think Bruce Arians will value that a little bit more than most people. So, yeah, I don't mind taking a shot with Jimmy G, but this is one where I'd be looking down, you know, maybe for something kind of like a Hail Mary play like a Russell Wilson, because I just can't see Bruce Arians not putting pressure on the Tampa Bay like ownership to try and grab a big guy just to keep him around. So.
And despite Jimmy G's like limited game, like his career record 37-16 as a starter with the playoffs included. The only caveat there to me would be I don't know if any of these NFC teams are going to want to trade within the conference. You know, if they are going to go after a quarterback trade.
I mean, I feel like San Francisco will just take what's there with Jimmy G. Like I'm not sure if they're so worried about like Jimmy G is going to come back and beat us. I think that's the one quarterback where. He's probably fine trading in conference.
Yeah. I could see like you offer him 2 second-round picks, something like that. They'll be like, okay, fine, deal.
Yeah,
like
I think San Francisco take that.
We'll do it. AJ, who do you think takes this next step? Is there someone whose odds are like, oh, that looks pretty tasty?
I mean, Russ Wilson was the first name that I saw on there. Plus 1,800. Like, I love that value there. And I agree with everything that Jeff said and you, Emerson, about this being a win-now team. They don't need their picks. They've got their first and second this upcoming year that they could shell out. I don't hate the Jimmy G call either. And honestly, before today's news that the Packers were ready to throw that big contract, why not Aaron Rodgers? Like, they could probably bring him and Devontae in, have those guys both come in together. Like, that is an immediate upgrade to what the Tampa Bay Buccaneers need. It's not the worst idea. Tom Brady retiring being the first step in that 3-step process to get them over the hump. But we'll see what happens, obviously, with everything there. But I do like Russ as probably my favorite target here in terms of, finding someone with really high value that makes a lot of sense, and plus 1,800 is a good spot.
All right, guys, we just discussed it. 4 teams available in the DK Sportsbook in this category, but we have more teams who could be added here that have questions under center. Like, which one in the NFL do you think has the most intriguing quarterback dilemma outside of those 4, AJ?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the Rodgers situation is a key one. I think there's, I think those are the 4, really. I didn't find anything that I saw. I mean, Houston maybe could be, in the mix. Are they going to go with Tyrod Taylor? What happens with Deshaun Watson? So really, where does he end up?
Yeah.
And so that's one to watch. But for me, those 4 are the key ones.
I mean, like Jeff, we talked about, one of you guys mentioned Carson Wentz. There's the question there in Indianapolis. We talked about the 2 quarterbacks for the Raiders who could be traded as well.
There's so many what-if teams we could bring up here. I mean, Washington, the Commanders, certainly a team. I don't think they're happy just rolling with Taylor Heineke for another year. The Panthers are another big one, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the Panthers, Sam Darnold was just horrendous. He was actually worse, if you're looking at grading and just advanced stats, he's actually worse with the Panthers than he was with the Jets, which seems like almost an impossibility last year. So Carolina seems very hot to trot to try and pick up someone. Now, Carolina has mentioned they're interested in the rookie class. I think Washington is really the team to watch here. They've already, by all accounts, made a trade offer for Russell Wilson. So, I mean, this is a team that's not holding back. I think worst case scenario, you're going to see a guy like Mitch Trubisky go to the Washington Commanders. So that's something to watch for. And I will throw out a dark horse for a big QB change and something that might just throw the whole market on its head. And that's the Atlanta Falcons. Matt Ryan, they have not committed to this dude at all. And there has also been links to a name we haven't mentioned at all, Jordan Love. If Aaron Rodgers is minus 500 to go back to the Green Bay Packers, we should be discussing Jordan Love with all these teams, because how can the Packers continue to have an asset like Jordan Love not add, not trade, and get more assets back to help them win a championship for Aaron Rodgers eventually, if they're going to keep Aaron Rodgers. So I think Jordan Love to the Falcons is something that could happen. And I think that Atlanta is a team that, if they want to get rid of Matt Ryan, again, Matt Ryan could go so many places.
Yeah.
So Atlanta's a team I would really keep my eye on.
And they're in real trouble because Josh Rosen behind them is an unrestricted free agent. You don't want to let him go.
No, I mean, well, has he, he's got like 4 different teams to play for this year. I mean, as he makes his rounds around the 32. And
Yeah.
I think he's like half done now, so.
Damn, I didn't realize Ryan had more than $40 million in dead money there if the Falcons did decide to move on. So I don't think there's a question he's going to return for his 15th season. But the teams say that. You can always move numbers around and get lure another team in for trade.
Hey, that's why they call it dead money.
Indeed, they do. Jeff, you are not dead to me because we are going to talk about the PGA Tour's 5th major coming up right after we get AJ and Paul's top DFS plays around the NHL. Let's do that hockey. The riveting RotoWire duo of Paul Bruno and AJ Scholes are here for some NHL opening face-off, sharing with us their top DFS plays on tonight's 5-game slate. Who is your top play at center tonight, Paul?
There are so many mismatches to pick from, and I wonder where AJ is going to go, but I'm going to stick to a couple of obvious ones. Florida at Buffalo. Alex Barkov, $9,000. That's one of the most expensive ones on the slate. But he's worth it. 15 points and 38 shots on goal, averaging 16 plus DK points per game. The Buffalo defense and goaltending is not inspiring. Of course, Colorado gets a similar mismatch at the Island against the New York Islanders. $8,600 his price tag, 8 goals and 11 points in his last 10 games. But that team could go off big time there tonight. I also go back to the Florida game for Sam Bennett. This guy's playing his first game back in Buffalo since he was dealt. He's going to be inspired. He's pouring a ton of shots on goal, and he's only going to cost $6,400 as the number 2 center in Florida, but he's going to get a lot of offensive looks and could really pay off there too. And then Patrice Bergeron, 4th on my list, the cheapest one, $6,100 against an LA team that Boston blasted last night in near outside Hollywood there. 43 shots on goal in his last 10 games played is a bit of a spike in his shot efforts of late. He's got 8 points in his last 10, and I think tonight could be points night for the Bruins again.
All right, AJ, priciest dudes here, McKinnon, McDavid, Barkov, Matthews. You like one of them, or there's a big gap there between 4 and 5?
Yeah, I don't. I'm going to go further down. Last time we were on here and I talked about the Leafs, they took a complete dump on and lost to Buffalo, who apparently, according to Paul, has a poor defense, but his Leafs only put 1 goal in on the Sabres. So not sure where that takes coming from, Paul. Maybe you just blacked that game out and pretended it didn't happen. So for me, I'm gonna go further down. I don't want to touch the Leafs tonight because I'm just not certain what we're gonna get out of them. I'm gonna go Elias Lindholm, 6K. The Flames have racked up 20 goals in their last 4 contests. The Oilers are, again, another team that's not exactly defensive stalwarts. In those games, those last 4 games, Lindholm, 8 points. He should be more expensive on the slate with just 5 games on there, in my opinion. He should be further up, closer to the 7K range. But if you're going to price him at 6, I think I'll use him all day.
What about over on the wing, AJ? Do you have a favorite DFS play there tonight?
Well, I got to stick with the Flames because the pricing it doesn't make sense. You can pair up Lindholm with both Johnny Gaudreau, who comes in at $5,700. Matthew Tkachuk, one of the Tkachuks, comes in at $5,200 here. Again, these guys combined for 15 points in the last 2 games. No idea why you're getting them under 6K in this one. If you want a non-Flameless option, I actually wouldn't sleep on Jeff Skinner for Buffalo at 5K. It's not the best matchup with Florida, but the Sabres have been upsetting good teams of late, in part thanks to Skinner's offense. So for me, Stick with the Flames here. If they're going to price that entire top line, maxes out at $6K for Lindholm. The other two are coming in under that. I think it's too good of an opportunity to stack him.
Paul, where are you going here on the wing, dude?
Well, I got to back up my Leafs a little bit, so I'm going to pick Mitch Marner, $7,500 for one of the guys that's carrying this offense. The other guy is Matthews, but you save $1,500 here, so I go that route for a guy who's pouring a lot of shots on goal and 18 points in his last 10 games. I don't know how you don't keep him out. There's some much cheaper, still talented options though at the wing. Jonathan Huberto leading the league in scoring. How do you price him at only $6,800 for a matchup against Buffalo? I don't know, but he's got to be in my lineup for sure. And then the Bruins tandem on the wings, Pasternak and Marchand, $6,400 and $6,100 respectively. They must be licking their lips in anticipation of LA's return visit tonight too. So they make a lot of sense for me as well.
Yeah, and I love the pasta pick. So he's averaging around like 4.5 shots a game too. So that's always giving him a chance to get that like 5-shot on goal bonus too on DraftKings. That's a good call by you. What about your favorite fantasy play back in the blue line, Paul?
Well, Kale McCarran, another guy. I don't know how you avoid picking this guy against the Islanders. He's get a lot of shots on goal, and he's up to 14 points in his last 10 games played, averaging 13.8 DK points a game. So that's a no-brainer for me. And then Morgan Riley of the Leafs. Look, they poured 80 shots on Columbus in the last 2 games that they played them, and so I expect more of the same. And I think more of them are going to go in tonight. I really do. And Riley's been a key part of this offense, an unheralded guy in the top 10 scorers among defensemen, but he's there on merit. He's a very, very good offensive player.
All right, AJ, hook it up.
Yeah, McCarr was the first name on my list here as well, even though he's the top of the price range. And look, if you use the Flames, you can pay up for both Kale McCarr and another guy like, I know I said I wasn't going to use the Leafs, but Morgan Riley has the 3rd most shots over the last 2 weeks of any defenseman behind McCarr and Alex Pietrangelo. So you could get the 2 guys on this slate who are putting the most shots on net in your lineup for really manageable price if you save elsewhere. So I'm going to use both of them tonight. And it does get you a little bit share of that Leafs game. They generally have been scoring despite that Buffalo game that I'm going to keep reminding Paul about.
Hey, on that first power play unit too for him. So always a way to get some extra exposure there on value on the man advantage. Let's go with your top value play on tonight's slate, AJ.
Well, Emerson, you just led into it. Get some share of power play opportunities. And I'm going to go back to the Flames. Tyler Toffoli priced at just $3,800 tonight. He's got 6 points in those 4 games that I've been highlighting. He doesn't play with the same caliber of guys 5-on-5, but he's on that star-studded top power play unit. They've really been rolling of late, converting at 38.5%. And so to get an extra share of that for a guy that's under 4K just makes too much sense to me.
Paul, value.
Mason Marchman from Florida. I can't believe the Leafs let this guy get away. 14 points in his last 10 games played. He's playing on the top line in Florida right now, and I'm hammering that matchup for sure. Andrew Mangiapane. It doesn't matter where Calgary's playing this guy. He's just continuing to score. 6 goals, 11 points, and 26 shots on goal in his last 10 starts. It should be fireworks galore tonight in Edmonton, and I know Mangiapane plays with a lot of emotion, so that's $4,400 well spent in my opinion. Andre Burakovsky, the best value I think of anybody that we'll mention today. $4,000 the price tag for a guy who's going to play left wing on that top line against the Islanders. It could be points night for Colorado, and can you imagine the value that he'll return if he is a part of it tonight? I certainly can, and I'm looking forward to it.
All right, dudes, let's wrap it up. Your favorite NHL bet on the DK Sportsbook. Paul, hook it up, dude.
There's going to be a lot of goal scoring tonight, Emerson, and I'm going to go the over on 4 games and the alternate total goals for the Florida-Buffalo game. I don't know how the Sabres hold on to the Florida attack. They might get there almost all by themselves. I'm taking 7.5 as the over-under, and I'm going to say I'm going to collect 185 on that. Toronto-Columbus, look, the Leafs can't keep the puck out of their own net, but they can certainly score. And you might say the same thing about Columbus. So again, go to the alternate line for a 155 payoff if they go over 7.5 goals. Colorado and the Islanders over 6.5. That's a really low line, even on the alternate line. So I'm picking up 120 there. And then LA and Boston, Bruins scored 7 all by themselves. They're going to get there with a little help from the Kings tonight, over 6.5 for plus 120.
Yeah, Maple Leafs and Blue Jackets, AJ, biggest goal total on the slate currently over under of 7.
Yeah, I mean that's crazy to see that, but I agree with Paul. I think the over makes a lot of sense. The net minding has been atrocious in Toronto, and the offense is pretty good there. But another spot I really like, again, I've been highlighting the Flames all game. I like them on the puck line here, plus 115 on the DK Sportsbook. And as I mentioned, their power play percentage, almost 40% over the last 4 games. So I'll take Lindholm at plus 200 to get a power play point. You can also grab Gaudreau and Tkachuk at plus 125 and plus 170 in that same category to pick up just one power play point. I think it's great value for those 3 player props.
Dudes, that is how you do what you just did. We will catch up with you guys tomorrow, and we're going to wrap up the show with PGA Tour Price Check with Jeff right after this. There is no question it is one of the best weeks of the year on the golf calendar, the first true marquee event of the season, the Players' Championship, TPC Sawgrass, the best field of the year on a course that is designed for loads and loads of drama, mama. Speaking of drama, Jeff Ulrich, who witnessed Reed bullying me after I picked Scottie Scheffler to win the Arnold Palmer Invitational. Fowler, Jeff, showing his true colors this weekend, did he not?
Absolutely. I mean, who was Reed on? Tom Hoagie? I can't remember.
Yeah.
But look, you made a great call. Look, I'll give Emerson some chops. He really made himself the third trio of the golf gurus this week by telling us on Saturday that Scottie Scheffler was going to make a run for this. And not only did he make a run, but he grinded out his second win in 3 starts. Scottie Scheffler on a nice run. So is Emerson Lotzia.
I love it, baby. Let's go. Undefeated in the past week. But let's price check here for the players at TPC Sawgrass. So a Fat Millie Maker available on DraftKings, by the way. $1 million going to first place. You get a ticket to Tournament of Champions if you win this big event. I love this. This is one of the best weeks in golf. Again, the weather looks awful, though, Jeff. It looks really wet, like 80% chance of rain there in Ponte Vedra Beach, at least like Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Is that going to, just real quick before we dive into some of the prices, is that going to factor into who you are targeting, the kind of golfer you're going to target?
A little bit. I think whenever you get bad weather, especially in an event like this, and on a course like the Players, I mean, the Players itself is a shorter par 72, so it really brings a lot of like the shorter hitters in. I mean, anyone can win this event, and we've seen that play out. Webb Simpson, guys like Jim Furyk finishing second at like the age of like 48 or whatever. People can win this without having like the big bomber length or anything. So when you add in bad weather, that can sometimes just throw more variables in. So I think that, it's just an event where you don't necessarily need to cross off as many people. It definitely makes it harder for DFS in that respect. But, you can still stack the top players and just look to differentiate a little bit more down below, because I think that a few more names than usual will be in the mix this week. Stress short games, putting even more than usual.
Well, we got 5 dudes with a price tag of at least 10 grand. So which one are you going to roster among that handful?
I think there's 2, and I'm going to make, for each tier we'll go, like the chalkier pick and maybe like someone you can differentiate with. I think Victor Hovland's going to be super popular this week, and I think he makes a ton of sense. I mean, it's bad weather, but no one's really just striking it tee to green better than Victor Hovland. So you worry a little bit around the green, and we saw it at the API down the stretch where, he just sometimes just won't get it close enough, and he's just not very good, like 8 feet in with the putter. But tee to green in a hurricane. I mean, there's really nobody with ball striking it that I trust more than Victor Hovland. I think at 10-1, he's going to be popular, but it's for very good reason. Obviously, people have just seen him play. I really think John Rahm, just paying up for John Rahm at 11-1 might be the way to go, especially in GPPs. I'm sure Rahm will still have ownership, but the dude gained over 6 strokes on approach at the API last week. If he picks up the around the green game where the putter gets hot at all, I mean, he's going to be there. So maybe John Rahm isn't quite sharp enough to like grab a win, but it could happen at any time with this guy. Even at 90% capacity, John Rahm is going to be in contention. So I really feel like Rahm maybe just going a little bit more under the radar here than people realize because of how good he's been striking it. It just hasn't quite clicked altogether. So this is going to be my 2 picks above 10K.
Okay. Yeah, he had that 2-putt from 10 inches. That was like Thursday. That went viral. That was rough. Also had an epic final round meltdown here in 2019.
Yeah, and those 2 things I think stick with people, right? I
Yes.
mean, we've got, people might just say, well, Rory's won here before. He played well last week. Let's go to Rory. Hovland's a lot cheaper. Morikawa is a dude. Like, I'm not sure what the ownership will be on John Rahm yet. We're early in the week. We have to see how things shake out. But if it's going to be even like second or third, I think he's going to be I think he would be my play for like if you're throwing in a couple big lineups into like the big milli maker this week.
Yeah, my only cause for concern too with Hovland is that he missed the cut in his only players appearance like last year. But he had that ridiculous span where he had like 3 wins and like a 5-start span. I think that ended in like January here. Let's go to the next little tier, 9,000 to 10 grand here. So in the 9K range.
So, we saw it last year with Bryson DeChambeau. When he won the Arnold Palmer Invitational, was playing well, came right into the players, rolled into the players, and just about won again. This Florida swing, the golf it's different courses, but the golf is the same in a lot of respects. It's tough. There's water everywhere. Tee to green games get stressed. And Scotty Scheffler at 9,200, I mean, I'm just not sure why you wouldn't roll him for one more week. Okay, he doesn't have a ton of experience playing the players. We get that, but experience only matters so much with these young players. It's the confidence and the form with these dudes. They all have top-end games, and right now Scheffler is absolutely firing in all regards. Just seeing him grind over the weekend at the Arnold Palmer Invitational, it would be hard for me, especially with like the tougher conditions likely in play, to see Scotty Scheffler not grind his way into like a top 10 finish again. So I think you just don't overthink that, and I think you roster Scotty Scheffler, and I do think that's going to be the popular move. I don't think that the field is necessarily going to be out on Scotty Scheffler this week just because he's won last week. I think, especially with the precedence with Bryson from last year, most people won't overthink this spot. So if you're looking for GPPs and a player to get on who might differentiate a little bit, I do think it's Xander Schauffele, who has played pretty nicely this year. I mean, lots of top finishes. Look, people forget he was T2 at this event, a few years back. Schauffele can grind with the best of them around the green too. He's certainly got a world-class short game. 9,700, you look at the price ranges here. We've got Spieth down there, Scheffler, even Hideki is cheaper now than Xander Schauffele. You're probably going to get, an ownership break just by paying up for Xander Schauffele. So that's one strategy I'd be looking at for GPPs. Again, those big fields, you're looking to differentiate a little bit, get a little bit low ownership on a guy with a lot of upside. Xander's that guy for me. Like,
it's not officially a major championship. We all know that, but this feels like it. Then you have like 47 of the top 50 in the world. This is typically the strongest field on tour like all year long. And Scheffler's really hung in there. He's really held up in major championships. Although another guy, Jeff, who missed the cut in his first appearance here last year. $7,500 to 9K. So the field here, much, much bigger, a lot more options. Where do you want to go?
Yeah, so when you're dipping down below 9K, I mean, I think that a couple players just in that high 8K range are really going to stick out to people. I think Daniel Berger, Brooks Koepka, both guys we've seen on this Florida swing. I mean, I love the upside with Daniel. I think Daniel Berger might be the most underrated player in golf right now. I mean, you look at Daniel Berger at 8,800 and a player I just talked about in Xander Schauffele. What is the difference between these two right now? I would actually almost give the slight edge to Berger. If it wasn't for a little back injury, we could be talking about a player who's just been like ripping off top fives. If he closes out that Honda win, maybe he doesn't get caught in that horrible monsoon or whatever. This could be a completely different situation with the salaries flipped. So again, it's not a situation that I think a lot of people will miss, and I expect Berger to garner some ownership. But man, I'd have no problem eating some chalk there with Daniel Berger this week because I think he's way underpriced, and I think he's a player who's very capable of winning a big event. I think Brooks Koepka, with his good play in Florida in his last start, will garner some ownership too. But if you're really looking for like a lower owned play, I mean, I think you've got to kind of look down the list. And I think going to a guy like a Mark Leishman at 7,500, who shot like $1 million over par to end the Arnold Palmer Invitational last week. And that's tough. We get it. But Leishman was pretty solid all year. So, I mean, if you're writing him off based on one round, you kind of really don't have like that legitimate an argument. And, you know, he's really cheap. He's a quality player. He's only 7,500. And I think Leishman is the type of player that I'd want to target in this range for big field GPPs, just from the fact that he's probably going to be way under-owned compared to, you know, what his salary is and his overall output has been in these big events long-term. I
just think there's something about Sawgrass, though, that doesn't sit well with him because he's missed the cut like 3 out of his past 4 appearances here. And then the one time he did make it to Saturday, he was T63, bro.
So it's a fair point. But the thing about Sawgrass is you look down the list, most players here have like a couple bad miscuts. And some players have more bad miscuts than others. But you know, when you look at Mark Leishman's short-term and long-term form, he's really picked it up since that kind of disastrous like 2020 season he's had. The approach game has been clicking more. Leishman's a player who can get hot with the putter too. So has Sawgrass clicked with him? No. Would I be betting him to win in the outright market? Probably not. But I think with again, you've got to consider all the factors for daily fantasy here.
Yes.
What's his ownership going to be? Are people going to be on him? And is his price at a discount? I think all things factor to yes there. So Leishman is a player I wouldn't mind sprinkling in for GPPs. And
it's unfortunate we don't have Reed here because he is our like grass expert. But real talk, it is something to consider with these guys too. And he's an above average putter on Bermuda. Just these are weird things if you want to get into the nuts and bolts. I mean,
weird times.
It really is. What a weird time to be alive. Value plays. Who do you like right now early in the week?
So when you dip under 7,500, I mean, again, you've got to consider that this is, basically what we're getting is a major championship-like field. So some names are going to just stick out. I mean, just completely crazy salaries on guys. Taylor Gooch is someone I'm expecting players to just gravitate towards. I mean, you look at his odds, he's going off around 60 to 1. He's only 7,200 on DraftKings this week. I mean, it's a player who was, a top 10 finish at the Players. He's been all over leaderboards. With the win at the RSM, and then obviously even into 2022, he's going to stick out like a sore thumb. I think my guy Russell Henley, people will gravitate towards him a little bit as well, but not as much because people I think don't trust Henley as much. Gooch is going to be a major chalk this week. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Again, we got to talk about strategy a little bit. If you're trying to avoid the Taylor Gooch chalk, where are you going to go? I mean, there's some interesting Europeans in this. Lee Westwood was second in this event last year. Russell Knox is a player who's gained over 3 strokes on approach in 4 straight starts now. He had that T7 to start the year at the Sony Open. I really like going to Russell Knox. If the conditions are bad, his ball striking is just going to take more precedent. And, again, I'll end this by going to another couple dudes at 7K. Chris Kirk, 2 top 10s in a row now. He's going to be chalk, but he's way, way undervalued at 7K. And the guy I love the most, Alex Noren, loves playing in bad weather. He's got that Euro thing, a lot of his wins. He's won the Scottish Open. He's won over in France on a really tough golf course. Alex Noren is playing really good golf right now at 7K. And if there is a dark horse winner to come from 100 to 1 or bigger, it's going to be him this week.
Totally forgot about Gooch closing with the 67 here last year to sneak into the to a top 5 finish.
Very sneaky.
Too.
Very, very sneaky.
Yeah. I don't know. It concerns me, though, when Reed's high on Gooch. So that's something to keep in mind. We have 90 seconds to go. Favorite DFS pick for the Players' Championship. What do you think?
I mean, this is just a field. There's just so many people we could talk about. I mentioned those guys at 7K. Like, there's such good value down there with guys like Kirk and Gooch. If that's your thing, he's not really my thing this week. But I'm gonna go with Daniel Berger at 8,800. Again, I just can't not mention how underpriced I think he is. He's less expensive than Will Zalatoris. He's less expensive than Jordan Spieth, who you want to talk about bad track records at TBC Sawgrass. Jordan Spieth is like the leader in the clubhouse there. So I think Berger is way undervalued at 8,800. And I think among the top group, that is where I would go. And that is where I would be, willing to build around, even if it means eating 20% ownership in big fields this week.
And Jeff, I'm looking here at his 4 career PGA Tour titles. They've all come at places that kind of emphasize driving accuracy and not so much distance, which you mentioned. This is one of the shorter, like par 72s, like on tour, and pair of top 10s at TPC Sawgrass in his past 5 starts. That's good. That's very good.
He likes Florida, man. I mean, he's a Florida guy, grew up around PGA National, which has a lot of similarities to TPC Sawgrass. And like I said, you look at what Daniel Berger does well. One of the best approach games, one of the most consistent approach games, iron players in the game. You know, he's probably top 5 right now. That will eventually spell out to big wins.
Okay. You and I are going to talk a lot more golf tonight. 5 o'clock, a special appearance by me on a special Monday edition of The Slate. You and me, baby. We're going to go like all players. All right? That's what we're doing today. I'm making the call now. We'll see everyone then. Have a great rest of your Monday, everybody. Thanks for watching The Sweat.